All right, so for this example 2B, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can give it a shot. It works just like 2A. And then when you've worked it all the way out, come back, hit play, and see if you got the answer right. So hopefully you pause the video and that you've worked it out. I'm going to plug in 225 for X because, again, that's in thousands of bottles. That part of the directions that I had to add there. So I'm going to plug 225 into that rational equation that we created up above. Everywhere I see X. Again, you can type in your calculator. It's probably best. It's not impossible if you don't do this, but it might be best to type it in the numerator and get the answer, and then the denominator and get the answer, and then divide that for your final answer. And again, those 2 decimal places. All right, so for example 3 here, I've actually given you the entire rational expression already. So you don't have to do any of that work. We just have to decide what to plug in. So there's my rational expression. I'll zoom in a little bit since it's so tiny. And we talked a little bit about this in when we were looking at the polynomial equations, but x equals 0 corresponds to 1990. So that's the year that this expression starts working. But I'm asking about 2002. So I don't want to plug in just 2002. We're not going to plug in the straight year. Instead, I want to know how many years have passed between 2002 and 1990. So I'm going to plug in 12. That's the hardest part of the whole problem. What this is telling me is everywhere there's X, I'm going to put a 12. So very similar to those problems we worked up above. I just went on and gave you the rational in this one. Again, let's type in the numerator and then the denominator. And we wanted to round to 2 decimal places. So that would be 3.44. And my units for this one are millions of dollars. So I want to make sure and put that in there. All right, so I've got a very similar one on the next page of the notes. So here, so 4A works very similar to the one that I just did. You have to think a little bit about the years. So I'm going to let you guys think about that, what year you should plug in, and see if you can go ahead and do it. So here's another pause break to see if you can work 4A, and then we'll work 4B together. So hit that pause button real quick. All right, so it can be a little tricky. I gave you x equals 0 or x equals 4. I'm sorry, in this case, x equals 4. So I need to figure out what x equals 0 is. So I'm going to subtract 4 because that would give me 0. 4 minus 4 is 0. And what I will do to one, I have to do to the other. So x equals 0 in this case is 2,000. That's my base. That's basically what I gave us in this last one. I gave you x equals 0 is 1990. This time I didn't give you x equals 0, but we had to find that. So we have to find what x equals 0 is. So I found that to be 2,000. Now I'm going to use that to figure out what year I should plug in for 2007. So 2007 minus 2000, I'm going to plug in 7 to my rational equation that I have from up above. Everywhere I see X, I'm putting a 7. Typing in that numerator and then the denominator. And then I'm going to round. It says nearest cent again. That's 2 decimal places. So 5.98. And this was the cost of health insurance. That's how I know it's money, because it was asking for that cost again, that average cost. All right, now B, we haven't seen one quite like it, so we'll work it out together. You don't have to pause it. So we're going to assume this remains true, and we want to know that an employee works 2,100 hours per year. What was the annual company cost? Now here's a note to remember is this is going to take 2 steps. So it's going to work like A, but then there's going to be an extra step at the end because I told us that 2,100 hours, so I have to take that into account. So don't round until the end. I'm going to get to that middle part on this one, and I'm not going to round until I'm ready for the very, very end. So the year we were asked about was 2020, and remember we're starting in 2000. So I'm going to plug in 20. And that cost function, that average cost function I was given way back in the beginning of the directions. So I'll plug in 20 everywhere I see X. In the numerator and the denominator. And that's going to give me a long decimal. I am not going to round it. Now, depending on what your calculator settings might be, your end decimals down there might be a little different. That's okay. Just don't round to 2 decimal places. So that gives me the average company cost per hour. This is the average company cost per hour in the year 2020. I'm going to take it a step further, and this person worked 2,100 hours, all right, in that year. So I'm going to do this answer, the whole thing, that not rounded part, times the 2,100. Now this is going to be my final answer, so I can round this one to 2 decimal places. We only follow the rounding rules at the very end of a problem with our answer. We don't round before then. So that would be my final answer. That would be the company cost for someone that worked 2,100 hours. So it cost them quite a bit of money.